And welcome live to the CMA EMEA panel. My guests today are Mehmet and Jan. My name is Christian. I'm your host for today, as always. Um, let's start with Mehmet, who is on my left side here, right side on the screen. If you would like to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Christian, for today, giving us the opportunity to talk about a little bit service portfolio and service catalog. I am Mehmet Kovans. Since 8 years, I am in the ServiceNow ecosystem, and I have implemented multiple projects in Switzerland with different companies. So I will try to discuss with you all topics and themes regarding service portfolio with you today. That's all about me.
Well, thank you,
Jan?
Jan.
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for organizing it and for having me today. My name is Jan. I am a CMA recently working with MHP, the Porsche company, on building the service and competence and working with mainly the industry-oriented automotive customers. And I'm really excited about today's topic because it reminds me a lot of pain when restructuring the catalogs and building the new catalogs and discussing the service portfolios and the services and offerings and terminology. So I'm really thrilled and looking forward to the discussion.
All right, then let's just dive right into it. Talking about pain, I mean, let's be honest. Most companies, when they get into the ServiceNow space, they dive right in and they were like, okay, we need a new service catalog. And then the big question arises, what is that even? What is even a service? And I would like to start with Mehmet, because we had in our pre-discussions for the stream, we already had a couple of interesting thoughts that I would like you to share, and then Jan, you can chime in whenever you want. Let's see how it goes.
This will be a great discussion, I'm sure. So in IT world, if you are talking about service catalog, they mean something else. As if we are talking about service catalog, we mean actually request fulfillment processes. In request fulfillment process, we need some catalog items. These are to be requested by customers or internal customers, your users, your employees. But the IT means more than this. So that what you are providing to your customers, so which services, which offerings you are providing to your customers, and not really the catalog items we have in the service portal, which we are creating for submitting any request for, let's say, resetting any password or sending some issue requests, or maybe creating a Windows or laptop requests for really, as you know, from the Amazon or anything you can request. But this is not what IT or business means.
Right. So what you're saying is a request that we cannot do on the catalog on the portal is not a service, right? Jan?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think it is the first step of the service. So therefore I repeated many times request. So it is something that you request. After that, then maybe you will be getting some service from the provider of the service.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will comment, and this is actually the definition of the service. It is the funny story. The Paul Wilkinson, one of the authors of the ITIL, every time on the ITSM conferences, at least in Czech Republic, where I'm from, he starts his every presentation with asking the audience, "Hey guys, can you provide me the definition of the service?" And every time it is 100% success. Very little people can just explain it what it is.
Right.
You know.
So if I ask you, Jan, what is it? What is a service?
Yeah. So obviously, when mentioning it, I checked that again because it is very academic. But there are three components of it, very important, which will get us back to the catalog items. The first is some value you want to achieve. So the service is the enablement of achieving some value for the customer. This is the first part, the value. And even here, it can start with a catalog item if I'm ordering new computer, new laptop, so some hardware catalog item. I see some value at the end of it that me as a employee, I can use some device and be part of the organization and create some value. So this is the first part, value. The second part is that to achieve this value, you need to produce some outcomes, right? So you need to know what it takes to deliver the service, what parts of the outcomes are there. So, and here are the definition, and the outcomes can be achieved several ways. And again, what is in the catalogs are just the interfaces to these outcomes. If I want to give me more space in my shared storage somewhere, I probably will go through the catalog from some request where I'm granted with more space somewhere. What is the outcome resulting in the value that I can do my job to using more space there? So this is the second part of the service. So through those outcomes. And the third part, very important, is without me as customer, when I'm consuming the service, taking care, bothering with the things, bothering with the risks, bothering with the costs of it. I don't care about the infrastructure if I'm buying Dropbox and the resources. So that outsourcing part of the service is why I am buying it as a service. So probably there is some team behind it using some resources I don't need to care about. And it is the third essential part of the service. So it is like that mean of the enabling the value. Item 4, very important switch from version 3 to 4. It's that co-creation that now it's like one-to-one play between the providers and consumers. The second are those outcomes, and then that outsourcing, like without taking care of it. So this is the service.
All right.
The catalog items, I see it as a very important part of this game.
Right. So, Mehmet, you want to add something here?
Yes, exactly. I want to add something from the World Forum in Munich. I have seen a guy from ServiceNow. He was providing some beer, and with some automation and so on. Actually, you could request anything from the portal, but the service itself you get as the consumer, as the customer, was a beer. You see the difference. This is the service. You got the beer. Without that, so only clicking something and maybe something is happening in the background, as Jan has already said, with an analogy of the Dropbox. It's not yet the service. Later, it will be a service if you get benefit of it, if you get some value from that. And you can then drink this your beer, and maybe somehow you can also measure it. If the service quality is good, so you are delivered with some beer, and then you can say, okay, the beer was good, and now you can have actually a KPI that you delivered it in a way that your customer are happy. So maybe later we will be discussing about common service data model, CSDM, and as a part of the CSDM, this is important to talk about measuring the value.
Yes, we will be talking, or at least touching, the CSDM. This is not, however, a deep CSDM session. There will be one, probably more, considering how big the CSDM is and what it all covers, sessions. And obviously, I will be happy to bring you guys back once you want to discuss that part. But let's focus on the service catalog and the unfortunate naming within ServiceNow for the service catalog. When I started doing this journey 14 years ago, I was super annoyed because the service catalog was called a service catalog. Thoughts?
Yeah, but today you can call it as you wish. The service catalog is just one of the catalogs. So you can have as many catalogs as you wish. And this is one of the way how to structure it, actually. So it is just the pack where you put your items, and it's up to you. Today you've got the HR catalog, you've got the financial services catalog. So It is no more just the old IT services as was perceived with the ITIL version 2 or older.
Right, that's not what I actually meant. I was more referring to the fact that the objects are called a service catalog, whereas they are not really a service that we are describing here, right?
Yeah. It is just the naming, but at least the table is the catalogs. Maintain catalogs. This is the item in the module where you find your catalogs. It's maintain
Right.
catalogs, not maintain service catalogs. So, but there is a lot of old history in the naming of the things.
Yes, we can also make an analogy with I think electricity. So you have switches, and you need somewhere start. So you need somewhere trigger the service. And in service now, the opportunity to bring this part to the end customer, so end user, this would be maybe called as catalog item. So otherwise, so from provider view. From provider point of view, you have the service portfolio where you are managing your services, or for IT operations management. So you need to maybe calculate some service level agreements and some commitments if you have enough availability and so on. But as I've said, for the end user, you need some interface. I think Jan said it as an interface. Yeah, this is true. I think this you need to implement somewhere a possibility, a channel for your end user. They can consume.
And that would be the request catalog. However,
Exactly.
and we have a guest here, Brent, in the chat, who mentioned that a service can be automatically delivered without any request to tracking it. So we do not necessarily need that layer of interaction to deliver a service. However, I think it's an important way or an important layer to all of it to deliver the
channel.
service.
A channel.
It's a channel.
That's one of the possibilities. So you can provide your services.
This is the beauty of the offering, because you can combine things there. And also, I tell it, describing it like it is the composition of the things. And part of it is what is called service actions. So if you need something, you need to let it know, or it can be automated via some monitoring. But as a user, I need to initiate it, trigger it. But also, it enables me, the service offering as such, access to the resources. So being the subscriber, and this is another important aspect of the service offering, is that you can specify who is legitimate to consume it. And it can be anything: group, location, company, individual users. And this is like, you can have service offerings which are related to functionalities of the business application. So I don't need to go to catalog to consume it. It is just the fact I've got access, and I can consume its functionality. I can do my finances in the SAP. So I am already consuming the service offering of the financial module of SAP. But at the same time, under the same service offering, I can initiate a couple of catalog items if I need something more. And as a combination, those service actions, those resources I can consume, the functionalities I can consume, all the agreements about how good the service is, how quickly someone will go and help me if it isn't working, this is all packed in the service offering.
I was at I think it was 2018, so it's been a while since I was there. I was in the platform advisory council with ServiceNow, and there was a terminology being used in some of these discussions that I unfortunately never heard again. I kind of liked it though. They were talking about micro moments when talking about a service catalog, and like I said, I haven't really heard that anywhere else since then. But I really did like the idea of thinking of the catalog interactions as the micro moments that a user does to consume something from the platform, and actually not only in the catalog, but it's like the most prominent example, thinking of the user interactions as micro moments. Any thoughts on that, Mehmet?
I think this is true. So it is a moment, an opportunity for the end user to consume a service. So as the brand is saying here in the chat, so it's not only the way, only the moment. So you have multiple opportunities. Let's say if you have an agent, so agent is in your portal or maybe embedded in another website, not even in the service portal. There is plugins in ServiceNow you can consume from their environments. That means you could consume this service via interface. That means in the web service or web page of another company layer. Or via agent, via chat and so on. So at the end of the day, what you want to provide is, as an example, you want to provide communication service, and in the communication service you have different offerings of emails or let's say Teams. So you don't need to say, okay, I have a service catalog item, I need a Teams or like this, even though you could ask for such a service, let's say via chat or agent in ServiceNow, or via an interface using Integration Hub in ServiceNow. So you could consume the same service, and you could also measure the service level.
Yep.
Therefore, I would say yes, it is. It's a micro moment.
Yeah, I guess it is very important to understand what are those touch points of the users and also have it organized. And in the catalog, it results, for instance, in amount of the catalog items. Because if you don't do that carefully, you can easily end up with a huge amount of catalog items, just missing some, wise approach to what these moments are, where user want to initiate something. And it is why the management through the portfolio is important, because it means you are managing it together, and it can't happen that you miss some similar catalog item already exists. It sounds ridiculous and funny, but this is reality. In many organizations, the more complex it is, the very easy catalogs are under the different control of the groups, resulting in having something similar in the catalog.
I mean, that's the governance aspect of maintaining the catalog, and we're not only talking about the request catalog, but also the services itself, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that can be a little bit of a nightmare. So we will be coming back to the request side and the interactive part of the services a little later in this broadcast. I would like to touch on the underlying structures of this. We were d'accord that the service catalogs in ServiceNow, I call it plural now. Thank you, Jan. That was very astute. That they are the interactive layer. Now, talking about the underlying structures, we need services, and ServiceNow provides us with an ever-growing complexity in the data model landscape. The CSDM is the foundation of this, and we have multiple service or kinds of services, with the business services, with the technical services, and then we have a bunch of offerings below that, and everyone gets confused, obviously, when it comes to building these things out. When you go to a customer and you want to build out a service catalog, and that comes back to a question that we also had in the chat from Brand. What are good ways to define a service from scratch, and how do you make the differences between the different let's say the different iterations, the different kind of services within the platform itself?
If I'm allowed to start, so we have fortunately a good description of CSDM implementation, and there we have a definition how we start things. You can have application-based implementation or service-based implementation. So I am a guy who is fan of services and therefore implementing service-based implementation since years, even before ServiceNow. So therefore, I'm starting with my customers and with the implementation with really the service definitions based on what you're providing to your customers, asking the first questions. So what you are providing, you need to define your capabilities, what you are doing really for your internal and external customers. That means for your employees or for your end customers. Asking such questions would help them. So therefore, I'm starting to make the awareness of the service thinking in service. And if they understand what we mean with that, they start to create some of them. And then the next step would be, okay, how we are making the connection to IT now, to really not from the logical level to the technical level, to discoverable, to anything that you can touch it, you can feel it, not anymore in the logical way of describing your capability, how you are providing something. Later, which items, which components you need to deliver your items. And on top of that, then they can remember, okay, we need another services, not only this business, what we are providing, but also the technological layer. We need some services to be able to provide our business services. Like this, you can trigger the discussions, and then they can remember, okay, actually, let's say they would need another type of services. Not only, let's say, 5 or 10 services they know, they would immediately know, they would immediately answer, but another one.
Right. Jan?
Yeah. This is true. I'm also fan of the service approach because it is at the end of the day IT service management. So the service perception is good. What is complicating it a bit is that for a majority of customers, it is running business. It is I was part of one or two projects which were related to the customer, which was established. So really building it up from scratch. But for many customers, it starts with like, okay, we already have our SAP beast, and it is hybrid. Part is in cloud, part is on-prem. And if you start with the services, what all you need to prepare to go live with your ITSM to cover the business as usual. So, and I call it service. It is the ServiceNow terminology from some success playbooks. It is the direction of maturity, and the more usual situation is where you have a lot of things in place. You need to address somehow. So very often the information available is more related to the infrastructure itself. So sometimes it is easier to start with the technical services because things like managed servers, you need to patch them. You need to, what are the window boxes? You know what are the Linux boxes. So it is very easy to perceive what is there. But these technical guys can own it as a technical service owners of those layers. But then that business perception of the service is more complicated, much more complicated, right? So it is, every customer is different, and there is no one approach how to handle it. My experience shows you need to show it quickly, end to end, working together, technical, business, and show it within the processes, like how it flows through the incident. If it starts as a reported for the service, which is related to the application, like I'm using the SAP Finance, and how it ends with a particular server and some storage, which is lacking the capacity there down. So yeah, the two approaches, the application wise and ServiceNow wise, are great guidelines, and we don't want to spoil CSDM too much, right, for the upcoming podcast. But service discussion is always very complicated, and I am always saying, like, CSDM is a great framework which is helping you with where to put the things, but the things, no one will do it for you. It is just empty boxes. So you need to populate
Exactly.
it. So the more sub-optimized implementations I saw was not in some kind of customizations, but in the kind of the data, how they were put in the boxes and what kind of data.
And that also goes back a little bit to what we discussed on Wednesday, Mehmet, when you mentioned that it doesn't always help if you take the approach that you need to fill out all the boxes, because you would just overwhelm your organization with not only requests in terms of tell me this and that about your infrastructure or your organizational metadata or whatever, and you just overwhelm them. I've seen this many a times now in differently sized projects where I would come in and I would be all CSDM is the best, and to be honest, it's really good. I like it. But if you are a pure believer in CSDM and you're going by the book, and you start with, what did we say, business applications, you mostly fail, because it doesn't help you to show value right off the bat. It is much better to, and now comes my question to you guys, to go and provide some services. Now, when we talk about services, though, I have seen in the, I would say, last 3 to 5 projects that I did, that defining services is very, very difficult for people. And the transformation towards a service-based organization takes time. However, you would like to start very quickly adopting the platform, bringing people into the different processes. Do you do a big bang and define all the services? Or do you go, here is some champion and we are showing how that goes? What's your usual approach? Let's start with Mehmet.
I think even it's not possible, Big Bang and so on. In my project, it was never possible. So you will have maybe 80% best case. The best case, you will have really like Pareto principle, 80%. And I'm saying the CMDB is a never-ending story. So their service design is like this. It's a never-ending story, because services are they have a life cycle. So anything has a life cycle, it is living. So therefore, you would not be able to have 100% all of your services immediately and you go live. But you could, for first, let's say, for first step, define some generic way of the services that you can then make some other services from this one. But I want to jump to our discussions from yesterday about business application, and so on. This is maybe important for all our friends and also the implementer colleagues, that I am not suggesting, I am not really recommending beginnings with some technical terms like business applications, and so on, because we all know we are not using them in our processes. So in the incident problem change or security incident, nowhere they are to be used or to be consumed. Maybe it's a good thing that you have all of this information as enterprise architect or anybody who wants to see the availability of all of these things. How can they implement the continual improvement processes and so on? But do you want to go live, and you want to go live in 3 months or 6 months, let's say, then you need to choose which part of the CSDM or which part of the objects you need to implement that you can go live with most value you can provide. And this is the decision you need to make at the beginning. So therefore, I am saying, okay, you need to start with your definition of your services, because incident management, problem management, all of these ITIL terms and practices, these are to make you or to bring value for your customer and increase the availability and customer satisfaction. It's not for you as the provider, it's for your customers. So therefore, you need to change the idea starting with IT for yourself. You need to change a mindset to your customers. And therefore, I'm using customer centricity. So customer centricity means for me, you need to somehow reject also the out-of-box possibilities. So reject, it's not really so hard what I mean. You need to hide a little bit features of, let's say, ServiceNow from your customers from the start. And later you can then improve the, let's say, quality of the implementation. This is how I'm doing.
Yeah, you want to weigh in?
I am, in the meantime, I'm observing the chat and it resonates those never-ending discussions about
it does.
what are the offerings. And yeah, the service approach is great, but starting discussions about the applications is also not bad. And at the beginning, there is like, you have a couple of things called applications in the CMDB. So terminology is important, but discussion about the applications is good, because if you have identified what kind of systems are used within the organization, then you can easily talk about the services which are required to keep them running, and what all the services and offerings the applications themselves offer, like what kind of function it is, what I can do. And it is back to that direction of the maturity, because a very little number of companies are, for instance, seeing it from the business capability perspective, like for what we are doing it, but it takes us to the application portfolio. But back to the services, everything has its purpose. So it must be justified somehow. So if some activities are happening within the organization, and probably yes, because instead of offerings, the customers usually sees the team responsible for some part of the infrastructure, or a couple of applications, or one application and one aspect of the application. But it is already the offering, so you can leverage on this, because this is something what can be consumed. So you can put your team there, you can put your groups there, your support group, which is picking it up if it belongs here in the service offering, your change group, if you wanna change the functionality of it, etc., including the SLAs. But returning to that direction of the maturity is important to somehow acknowledge what is the style of the company. Are they open to reshuffle it? Because, and this is I really like that Conway's law. It is about the organization, and any IT, any system you are building by this law is nothing but reflecting that complexity of the organization eventually, the communication organizational. And it very applies to the catalog and to building the service portfolio. Because if the organization itself is complicated, then your service portfolio will be very complicated. So sometimes the job to build a great catalog and service portfolio comprises also the challenge of touch the structures within the organization, and here the pain comes.
The pain comes exactly at that point, and I think Frank in the chat has made a very good point, that for him services and offerings are more like categories to sum stuff together. And if I'm combining this with someone, I think it was Ian from ServiceNow, whom I talked to a couple of years ago. If we sum these two things up, there is no wrong way actually to define your services, as long as, and I think that is important, and it's an aspect that's completely overlooked from my perspective in everything, as long as you're willing to keep changing. Because every time I'm having this discussion is like, oh, we are defining our service model. These are our services, and that is set in stone. And we don't want to change that again as soonish. Yeah, but you will always need to make some changes. And what I'm struggling with is this: we are in a very dynamic digital world where things are, you have your Bitcoin here today, and then tomorrow it's there. You know where I'm going with this. It's very dynamic, very fast paced. And if you are not willing to change your organization to keep track with these fast changes, then you're on the wrong track anyways. So however you define your service model, from my perspective, your governance behind it should allow for the possibility of adopting new realities, of changing the model later on. And that would also help with Frank's input here in having the categories, and then reshuffling things, resorting. I'm not a fan of having like a monolithical structure of anything really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that reminds me one example of that technological switch. The incident management, for instance, they are the categories, subcategories, which are a kind of old-fashioned way how to categorize that.
Yeah.
And I was part of the initiative where I came and recognized, oh, there are hundreds of the categories and even more subcategories, and there are a lot of ifing behind them, leading to the groups, initiating the SLAs, and doing the things. So the guys used the categories as a service offerings. So it ended up with turning that complexity towards the service portfolio, and everything works nicely now. So it is that, to recognize that there is the better way how to do that. But definitely that we will to change the ways of working with the services is the key, and it's not the technological task. It's more the organizational change management.
Right, Mehmet?
Yeah, I want to add something due to the comment of the Frank. If it's only a categorization, I think it is not enough said, because then how you will be then implement the commitments, the whole SLA configuration, or the availability of a service, pricing of the service, options of the service, and so on, because it is not only about a categorization of your service. It is also about improving your customer satisfaction scores, and improving your service availability, improving your values, or maybe adjusting some of them. So you have different options, different offering for different customers. Like you are going to, let's say, to the shop, and you have different model with different pricing. And you are aware you are buying something, it's cheaper, and then you will be also getting a little bit not the same quality as, let's say, the expensive one. You got what I mean with that example? So if you cannot expect both of them, or let's say a car of BMW, but if you are buying let's say cheaper one, you should be also aware that you will be not have the same quality as the expensive model of the BMW. So it is more than only categorization. I think it's also to be aware. So end customer need to be aware of the quality, of the availability, of the pricing, and all of the options the offering will be providing to you. And so then you
Yes.
can also balance the value.
Yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need an elaborate network of offerings and services and so on. I think that's where Frank was going rather with this. However, and this is kind of what Ivan is just mentioning in the chat in the last couple of seconds. I think you can determine whether or not you need a more elaborate structure when you come to a point where your organization that is behind the services, your governance, and what you do with these, let's take up Frank's terminology, categories, what you do with them. Because it is not only for some weird reporting, right? And Ivan has mentioned it as well. You have your SLA commitments, you have your assignment rules and logic behind it. You have your impact analysis that are luckily in ServiceNow out of the box there when you apply these things correctly. So I think just calling it categories is a little bit short. However, it might be a good starting point when you adopt this ever-changing mindset, and this is also, and that's why I mentioned Ian earlier. Ian Liu, I'm not sure what he does now, but he's a great guy. Worked in Switzerland and for ServiceNow a long time, and he mentioned to me once, in CSDM, which we are deep in now, but whatever. It is important that you move. You do not necessarily need to move in one specific direction, but you need to move. And I think that kind of encompasses the entire approach around, you don't build your service portfolio once, you keep building it forever. And there was a question, I think it was, where is it? I missed it. It was on how often do we review the taxonomy? There was a question about that. Is like twice a year, is that enough, or should we review that more often? Any recommendations from the pros?
I'm not an enterprise architect, therefore I cannot answer these. If I'm not sure about best practices, I will be not answering. But I think it depends on the life cycles of your services. If you are changing everything, so let's say every month, then you need to also think about your taxonomies if you have really set them correctly, because taxonomies are categorization of the services. So these, therefore, if you want to recategorize your services, then it would make maybe for you sense that you evaluate it, let's say every 3 months instead of waiting 6 months. And so it depends how much your services are really living. So, or they are, so let's say static, or they are really living due to the new design of new services, adding new services, retiring new services, retiring your old services, and so on.
We're having an actual discussion going on between the viewers here, and we'll let them deal with that for a bit here. Let's move to a little bit of a different topic, because we will come back to service definitions and how they fit into the ecosystem in our CSDM panel, which I hope that we can set up the first version or the first iteration next week. That's going to be a little more crazy. I'm trying to get more guests in, which will make the moderation a living nightmare, but we'll get there. One thing that I wanted to touch with you is the actual technical realization of this, and what we actually need to build out and combine the service portfolio on the one side, so our services, our service offerings, with the interactive layer that we had, the service catalog or the request catalog. Let's name it like that. What are your experiences, and how much work do you usually put into this? Because we all know, and this question came up in our CMA group just a couple of weeks ago, shortly before Christmas. There is no out-of-the-box connection there.
I think this is a great question, really a great question, because even it has an impact to your offering to your customer if you're reading RFI, reading RFPs, and so on. So therefore, it can be even a black box for your estimations. Because if you are not aware what the customer will be doing with the catalog items, let's say the majority of the customer, or how big they will be, or if you are making let's say migration projects from the workflow, the old technology, into the new flow designer with the integration hub possibilities and so on. These are maybe the most important inputs you need to evaluate, and based on these inputs you can have better decisions. But how I am doing the implementation, so let's say we have different way in real world, because you can import via Excel into ServiceNow. You can use Service Builder. You can use form view on the ServiceNow. backend, and be it maintaining the service catalog, etc., etc. I think there is not a way of doing this, the creation of the catalog items. There are multiple ways doing this. Maybe the best practice of the flow can we a little bit discuss, because I'm saying you should really create your flow in modular way, that you are using subflows and so actions. This is the important aspect if you are creating big one. And if you are repeating anything, let's say the approval process, you should be thinking of using approval process for all of them and embedding this process as a subflow in your flows, etc. Something like this could be discussed in.
There will be different topics around this, and I agree with you. Plus, you have a certain limitation in the flow designer, anyways, when it comes to complexity, right? I think it's up to 50, and then you need to customize the properties, and you run into all sorts of issues. That's, however, not exactly what I meant. It is more about the actual combination of service portfolio and request catalog. For incident, and Jan has mentioned and built on that earlier, there is obviously a clear reference already out of the box. For service catalog, there is not.
It is actually, every task has it.
Every task has it.
So even the thing is how the service offering is populated there. So once you start playing with your service portfolio, you've got a chance to put the catalog items which are orderable under this service offering, and this is the way how you will advise the platform to use the service offering for your request. So this is how you can observe it on the portfolio level, and even the functionalities like digital portfolio are then providing you the numbers, providing you that quality of the service. If you put the catalog items, the requests under the offerings, they start to be part of the service delivery management. So there is, if you open the service offering, you can locate easily the related list, items orderable by the service offering, and this is where it starts.
This is how that would look. I'm just sharing that particular screen that you're referring to. I made a screenshot earlier of that today.
Items, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the second row. Items.
It's right here.
Yeah.
That's where you do it. What it does not do out of the box, it gives you a certain control. What it does not do, it doesn't populate this information automatically into your requested item. It does not.
I'm not certain if the digital portfolio management is bringing some functionality on it.
Yes, it does.
Easily, so that is probably the answer. Like another plugin, because this is what the digital portfolio is doing, connecting the dots. So it might be then working. There is also, I spotted it, the control that you can make one catalog item part of just one offering. If you are trying to put it in another offering, you will receive the warning message that it is already part of the existing service offering, what might seem as a limitation. There was the comment in the chat, like seeing the catalog items on multiple places. So the service offering is not the multiple place where you can have it. Of course, you can have it a part of multiple bundles. You can have it in different places on the portal, on the employee center, thanks to taxonomies and the structure of the catalog. So that's not a problem. But from the service management perspective, the item, once you put it, the catalog item under the service offering, then it belongs to this service offering, and people responsible for the offering are then responsible for the catalog delivery, fulfillment of the catalog item itself.
And I think that's important to note, right? That it is not the consumption side of things that determines the governance. The governance is there anyways, right? It's part of the service management, like you just said, Jan. But the consumption can be that is up to you. That is an actual category thing with the taxonomy and so on. Would you recommend, though, and now I'm going to Mehmet because he's done that so many times in the past, would you, I need to stop this, would you recommend actually to have a service offering that you have connected to some sort of a catalog item in multiple places in your consumption layer, in your service or in your request catalog?
So I think you have not shown the menu. In the CSDM menu, we have the possibility. I wanted to only add something regarding the connection of the request item to the service offering. So in the CSDM menu, you have the technology catalog item. You can also make an NM. It is an NM relationship. So that means this is the answer also for your questions. So out of the box, CSDM says you are allowed. So you're allowed to have multiple services, service offering are related to multiple requested item. But if I would recommend this, this would really take a long discussion, because in earlier stage, around 5 years ago, I have also implemented some projects without having these CSDM modules, which we're talking about. We have built a custom field on top of the catalog item, and we connect it to service offering directly. That means you have only one service offering for that catalog item. But at the moment, so the best practice is CSDM framework, and CSDM framework is allowing you having NM relationships.
That is still the kind of the service management side of things. It's still the question: should a user on the catalog, on the consumption side, on the consumption layer, find the same micro moment 5 times in this taxonomy somewhere, or would you not? Would you rather not? I mean, let's take aside the discussion that is going on in chat right now, which I appreciate, by the way, around user criteria and visibility, because that is an actual thing. However, I would have the same user criteria whether or not I have it in multiple categories. Correct?
Exactly. User criteria are all the NM relationships, so you can use it multiple times. User criteria are also to be used for knowledge base articles, so it is not only one-to-one relationship. But if you are going back to the main discussion, to taxonomies and so on, the service portfolio, I think this is also virtual naturally about so user criteria, discussing about it, how we can so make so entitlements based on the rights we have bought from the provider and so on. It is really important to make your taxonomies, to create your taxonomies in your service portfolio. And if you have your taxonomies and you have already defined your service offering, and then you have made a relationship to your catalog items, you can then, based on the consumption or subscriptions, also create your user criteria.
Yeah. And this is what I see the key decision line, because you can do your catalog management and request fulfillment entirely without the service offerings. You can do that. It is the old-fashioned way. So this is the key moment when you decide to start structuring your catalog items under the service offerings. So it is like another view optic on how you want to structure and manage your services. But no one is pushing you to do that. Despite it is, in the CSDM, by the way, the catalog items as such are in the most upper maturity level of the CSDM. It is the fly level, actually. So connecting the catalog items toward the service offering is the most mature.
I would say this guy here right next to me would disagree, because right?
I
It's
also
all
disagree.
about
I also
the
disagree, me personally, but it is by the book. By the book, the catalog items comes with a
Yeah.
price. It is very mature thing to start connecting the perception of the catalogs, requests, and fulfillment together with the service portfolio.
Is this the
Here's-
reality, Jan, or this
Yeah.
is theory of the theory of framework?
Yes and no. So here's the thing, and I agree with both of you. All right, don't get me wrong. Whatever I'm telling you guys next is very much Kool-Aid, right? So I'm not saying it's I'm completely drunk on it, but if you build out your basis like it is mentioned in the best practice approach, crawl, walk, run, fly approach, right? I think it is easier to grow beyond these first stages and beyond the IT service management. And I think this is why, and there will be a question to both of you in just a second. I think this is one of the reasons why we are often not getting to a point where we are like, okay, this is why it is so academic in the first place, because most customers are kind of stopping there. I'm not sure when we're talking about, let's start with Jan, when we're talking about implementing CSDM or service portfolios, let's just keep it at that, and we want to grow beyond IT service management. Is that still a topic with your projects?
It's even the CSDM is complicated to justify. Very often it ends like, why we need so many boxes for just one thing? You have 4 layers of the things, including the service offerings, for just one thing we are delivering right now. And it is partially correct, but important is the purpose of the boxes, the purpose of the offerings. So you need to show it in action. And if I can recommend one thing, if it is up to me as architect, I would do that by the book. So no catalog items without the service offerings, no something what can be consumed without the service offering. And of course, you can't have service offerings without the services. So that's all fit together.
I love my panel because I'm pretty sure Mehmet sees it completely different.
Yes, I had already multiple discussions even in the CMA program around these things. Yeah, because the reality is not that. I'm in none of my projects. Was the reality. So request fulfillment was part of the implementation at the beginning. Even my last project around 2-3 months ago, they went live with 2 request items, without incident, without problem, without change, without nothing. So then explain me, hold this foundation level, blah, blah, anything. And so the customer, they didn't even wanted to have incident management, problem management, change management. And this was a big one with billion euro, it's a very big one with 2-3 request catalogs.
I think it comes down also a little bit to what you mentioned to me in the meeting on Wednesday, when we're talking about a portfolio, and again, we are at the CSDM, but we are talking about very specific objects still, because there's more, right? There come different roles with it. Who takes care of all these things? And I see that from 2 perspectives. You mentioned something great about it doesn't matter the size of the customer. They don't have certain roles, right? However, we also see in what kind of situation a lot of these companies are. And if you drill it down, you can ask the question, and I think it is allowed to ask that question, is that because they don't have these roles?
So I think they in some companies they have even roles, but they are not ready to do all of them and then go live. So they want to really be agile. They want to consume the benefits of the service now immediately. I think this is the reason.
Okay. Yeah.
But my recommendation is from the functionalities, because a lot of nowadays projects has that hype of do that out of the box, right? And dependence on the offerings within the ITSM is huge. If you want to go out of the box, so and there are some shortcuts. You don't need to generate it manually. For instance, you can provide your service offerings based on the other data you got, so you can easily end up with having the complete set of the boxes to satisfy and let the out of the box power work for you, and then continuously work on refining it.
Yeah.
But the principles are important to understand them at the beginning and stick to them, because it is very hard to return in the future if you are changing the principles.
I have done a project lately where we had the situation that it was pretty clear what kind of requests on the consumption layer they wanted, right? But then again, it was clear that they didn't want that. What does that mean? There was a lack of people willing to define or redefine this entire structure of existing service items, hundreds of them. I think we had, when we started this, it was 500 micro moments, which is, for a company that size, it was quite a bit. Would potentially have been 500 catalog items, and it took a lot of discipline and organizational change management, bringing people to acknowledge their roles and the responsibilities that come with these roles, to actually do the work and in their service define what kind of interaction points we would need to have. And that shows for me, and that was kind of a wake-up moment for me as well, because I've done this a lot, and I've done catalogs in the past that turned out not to be too good, because the roles who takes care of these things and who is responsible for the content of these things, they need to be there not only during the project, but also later. So just dumping something where we defined, a monolithic structure doesn't quite cut it. That's my point of view on how to approach this. Can we do service or request catalog without a service portfolio? Certainly. We've done that for years, right? Before, when I did my first ServiceNow project, we didn't even have a service field. That was not a thing back then, right? Does it still satisfy the requirements of a modern service-based IT organization or organization that consumes our platform? No, it doesn't. But to completely do that, it requires more changes than just bringing in a bunch of services.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also about the cooperation and back to the roles. There must be someone who is responsible for the portfolio and for the catalog, and the two must speak each with the other.
All right. Mehmet?
I'm here a little bit hybrid in thinking. So really, even in my article, so I'm saying customer centricity. So, and not we have a great platform. ServiceNow is really great. Everything you can do here, and so on. But we know also the pains of in European companies. Today's European. The digitization is so slowly going on and so on. We know the reality. I think, it would be great that we have all of the possibilities of service now and making it great, making it with all of possibilities of service now. But you will not see so many companies that you will be able to implement all of these modules and possibilities of service now. And maybe we need to be also agile in this sense. So therefore, I'm saying agile leadership is also needed. Not only having some theory in the books and saying, yeah, I have learned it from book like this, and now we will apply the book. Yeah, you will apply the book in 10 years. But let's say another guys from another continent, they are doing it very quick. So you need to be faster. So therefore, I cannot wait for 5 years to implement incident management, or let's say some catalog items.
Yeah.
I need to be agile also in thinking and in doing.
Oh, we all need to be agile. And that kind of comes back to what I said. Well, we're well beyond our time. That was an hour really fast gone by. Thank you so much for joining me this Friday. Thank you, our viewers, for joining us as well. I think it was a good audience turnout, nice interactions. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone. And with that, happy Friday. And I see you hopefully next week. And I hope I see one of you guys, or both even, for the first of the CSDM panels. Let's see. Until then, have a good one.